Now more than ever, innovative technologies are fueling change and sparking new ways of thinking. Collaboration between corporations and startups is key to staying at the forefront of these trends. However, finding the right startups can be expensive, time-consuming, and ineffective. But Plug and Play is here to help. As a corporate partner, you will gain access to a whole ecosystem of innovation. Discover startups that meet your tech interests. Stay updated on the latest trends and network with industry peers. We will help you during every stage of your innovation journey, no matter where you are and where you want to go. Get in touch today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maximilian Youngreis, and I'm the head of crypto and digital assets here at Plug and Play. The following is a conversation with Jacob Ko and Yu, who filmed last night to accommodate the time difference as they're both based in Singapore. It is both of their first times on this series. Jacob is a pioneering visionary in the early stages of the Web3 venture capital scene with an exceptional grasp of emerging technologies and their potential implications. He's one of my favorite VCs to talk about pretty much anything and everything. Yu is the founder and CEO of Kaito, and his work embodies a visionary fusion of AI algorithms and cryptographic principles, unlocking novel solutions across diverse domains such as decentralized finance, autonomous organizations, and secure data sharing. After a conversation, we will be making intros directly to our speakers, and we'll be holding a live Q&A with myself and our crypto ventures analyst and co-host of the series, Kavi Dewan. This is the Plug and Play Crypto Talk series. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. Now, dear friends, here's Jacob Ko and Yu.
Hey folks, thank you all for tuning in. My name is Kavi Dewan, and I'm on the crypto ventures team here at Plug and Play, and I'm joined by Maximilian Youngreis, our global head of crypto and digital assets. Before we introduce our two amazing guest speakers, I want to set the scene. And so for any new folks in the audience, this is our monthly Crypto Talk series, where we bring on incredible founders and investors in the space to discuss a particular area within the crypto industry. In the past, we've had episodes on topics like asset tokenization and decentralized wireless. This month's episode, as you folks know, is on the intersection of crypto and AI. Crypto and AI, respectively, have been the last two hype cycles in terms of venture funding and technology news. These technologies, while of course very different in terms of their purposes and where they fall in the infrastructure and application stack, do have some areas where they overlap and where they benefit each other. And generally speaking, we're very excited about them both. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers today. Yu Hu is the founder and CEO of Kaito AI, a company seeking to revolutionize crypto research with investing with AI. They are backed by leading investors like Superscrypt, Sequoia, Dragonfly, and Jane Street. And prior to founding Kaito, Yu managed a $500 million international equities portfolio for Citadel and worked in investment banking for Deutsche Bank. Jacob Ko is an investor and founding member at Superscrypt, an early-stage blockchain investment firm backed by Temasek, Singapore's massive 200 billion plus investment arm. Prior to founding Superscrypt, Jacob was a VP of investments across Temasek and worked in investment banking for Citigroup, as well as holding roles at top FIs and consulting firms, including A.T. Kearney, UBS, and Deloitte. Yu, Jacob, welcome, and it's an honor to have you here with us today.
It's good. It's great to be here today.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
So just to kind of take it away from here, I know Kavi gave a high level of your folks' background, but would love to hear from both of you directly, what drew you both to the crypto and digital assets space? And for the audience, what exactly are you folks building at Kaito? And for Jacob, investing in Superscrypt. So maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, sounds good. I actually started off my crypto journey back in 2017. While at the time I was at Citadel, obviously the initial idea was, hey, I've been trading all day. Crypto is the emerging asset class that I was very curious about. So I quickly fell into the crypto realm and started day in day out researching crypto in my spare time. So that lasted for about 5 to 6 years, and obviously got very involved in 2020 through DeFi Summer, and then 2021 through the AIFT season. But I think it was also during that period of time I started realizing that the way information disseminates in crypto is extremely chaotic, and oftentimes information sourcing and query information is not the easiest. To be, I think the one thing that people will notice in the industry is most of the Web3 information today does not exist on Google, right? If you talk about like blockchain information is not searchable on Google. Most of the crypto discussions that happen on social media, such as Twitter and Discord, thousands of white papers and technical documents, governance forum discussions, they don't exist, and they don't exist on Google. So while I was kind of doing a lot of research, I had a huge sort of desire, to start thinking that, hey, I really need a tool that can really help me with that. And eventually I decided, why not I just assemble a team and build it myself? And hence why I started, building Kaito in early 2022. And then, 6 months forward, here we are. We have a team started in Seattle, but obviously global now, of around 20 people globally. Most of the co-founders coming out of Silicon Valley, companies such as Facebook and Amazon. So, and in terms of the solutions that we're providing today at Kaito, we're mostly building a search engine that really allows users to, Web3 users to efficiently query information on and around the blockchain.
Great. And I guess as that relates to the general trends, and we've seen different areas within the crypto or Web3 space emerge. And for investors, they oftentimes have to be up to date with these technological advancements, whether it's zero knowledge or whether it's account abstraction. Now kind of formalizing into the investment landscape, this would be a great place for me to kind of hand it over to Jacob in terms of how did this kind of coincide with the tailwinds that we're seeing across the Web3 space, and also maybe if you could speak a little bit more to what types of investments you're looking for at Superscrypt.
So I'll give a 10-second intro. My background is traditional sort of management consulting, then investment banking, and then investing with Temasek for about 8-9 years. The last role I had was really focused on agri-tech investing of all things. And so you might be wondering why the jump to crypto and when that was the case. My first sort of exposure to crypto, actually, funnily enough, was Temasek as an experiment at one of our offsites. They had given everybody $50 worth of Bitcoin back in 2016 in a wallet. And I was one of those idiots that never bothered claiming mine, because now it's probably worth several $1,000s. But fast forward to 2020, there was COVID. There was a bit more time for us to explore other things, and I went very deep into sort of understanding Ethereum, DeFi Summer, started experimenting and actually using the blockchains to understand what the promise was, from Binance, Polygon to Solana, and went down very deep into the rabbit hole. So when Temasek wanted to seed an early stage crypto fund, jumped at the opportunity, and here we are. Now, in terms of sort of where all of the exciting stuff comes in, crypto is and blockchains are an innovation that help bootstrap sort of incentives. They help people be able to transfer money, capital, assets very easily, but the innovation never stops, right? There's always something new happening. And you mentioned ZK technology and AI, and these are some of the adjacent and helpful technologies that would help augment and improve the performance of blockchain over time. So you really have to be very aware of these technologies emerging, how they intersect with Web3, and what the mid to long-term potential is. As with most things with technology, usually it takes a long time for you to hit an inflection point, but to not be aware of how it could impact blockchain or how we transact and even disrupt existing businesses in fintech or TradFi or even consumer brand businesses, it would be irresponsible not to be paying attention to these technologies.
Jacob, thank you so much for your backgrounds. Jacob, you also mentioned some of your theses, how you're viewing the space. You talked about how you started building a tool for yourself that became Kaito. I want to sort of touch on one question, which is your folks' story together. So for the audience, some background. Superscrypt, alongside the Spartan Group, they recently led a 5.5 million Series A funding round for Kaito, valuing the business at $87.5 million. And this is following a $5.3 million raise back in February from Dragonfly, also including Sequoia and Drain Street. Jacob, I'm wondering, can you tell us the story about how you initially met you and what went into the decision to ultimately invest? And, flip side, after Jacob, you, of course, would love your side of the story and why you ultimately chose Superscrypt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. To begin with, I think we invest mostly into infrastructure and technology. To my last point before, you really have to be aware of the trends that are happening, right? And we do pre-seed all the way up to Series A investments. We've invested across things like wallets, developer tools, and data indexing and search was an area that we were looking into, right? Because ultimately, for blockchains to be very useful, you need to have the underlying onboarding tools. Users and consumers have to be able to connect to a blockchain. Developers and creative people need to be able to build applications, right? And as part of that, you also need to search historical transactions. If, for example, you are an NFT marketplace, you might want to see what it was sold for, what was bought for previously, and you've got to go look back in data previously. Same with developing, let's say, DeFi indices and things like that. And so as we were digging down into search and index, it's, when you first get into crypto, it's very clear that it is quite difficult to pull together strands of information. It's not as simple as a Google search. You have to go to various different mediums, whether it's Twitter, Discord, GitHub. You have to be able to find the right people, and it's all very scattered. So we realized that if more people are to onboard and make sense of this space and the promise is really to come through, then it needs a sort of unified search. And so as we were doing some research, someone put me in touch with you, who's based at Singapore, and we had our first conversation. And what became very clear to me was that they had identified this problem that I had mentioned. They had a solution, which you will probably go into more detail on how they tackle it. But then they were also building very fast, they were iterating quickly, and they were looking to see how they could employ some new technologies like AI to improve that experience. And so essentially we sat down at a table, got to meet each other and started riffing. And that's how we sort of first had that conversation, maybe about seven months ago, I think now.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, that was, I think 7 months ago, that was kind of the first conversation we had. And back in the day, there was, I think ChatGPT just came out not long ago. And then we're kind of thinking about integrating that as well. We had a demo in terms of without ChatGPT, how everything works. And then we're thinking, hey, after leveraging large language model, this can be order of magnitude much more efficient. And we talk about all the things we've been working on. And I think one thing that really struck us was the level of sophistication that the Superscrypt team had, and also them being actual power use of the product going all the way in the past 6 months, right? So every day we have user data, we can see the entire Superscrypt team is kind of using the product, giving us feedback. So that has been incredibly helpful, and one of the things that they really kind of they really appreciate and across all our investors.
And that must be quite a competitive advantage for Jacob and the Superscrypt team to be able to use transformative technology as it's being built and kind of gain those signals from the market before they actually are kind of bubbled up to the surface. So before we get to the broader overlaps and synergies between crypto and AI, let's dive deeper into Kaito and what you're building at this intersection. In the audience, we have a lot of executive whose companies could be potential customers, namely financial institutions and enterprises. Could you give us some insights into the unique aspects of the product? For example, how you're leveraging crypto and AI for sentiment analysis?
Yeah, that's a good topic. I think before I jump into sentiment analysis, maybe just some basics of the product. So today, if someone, I think two pieces of verticals of data that currently I find it very hard to kind of interact with. Information that directly lives on the blockchain. There's obviously a completely different infrastructure versus the open web. So it's not, searchable, scannable through the likes of Google and even a new Bing, right? So this is one. And the other thing is, if you want to try to get some of the information that does not directly live on the blockchain, but on the on the blockchain, but around the blockchain. So people's discussions, people's opinions that mostly happen on Twitter, Discord, today is very, very tough to access. So we provide a solution that aggregate everything together and then allow users to efficiently query them. So when you want to find out, hey, what are some of the latest developments on the blockchain, then you can, come to a search engine and then search for it. What are some of the technical implications of Ethereum scaling solutions development over the past 6 months or into the future? These kind of topics that you can search on Kaito. So this is number one. And then B, in terms of the implications for some of the corporates that may be listening today, one is into the future. If, let's say, for example, if you issue an NFT or if you start getting into crypto payment. So in the past, most of the information is siloed at each of the corporate level. These are private information, right? So if Louis Vuitton sells something, then Gucci is never going to know. As other companies, Ferrari is never going to know, never going to have this customer information. But today, once you start getting to crypto payment, then all this information is actually transparent and public on the blockchain. Then you start, getting to the question of how do I understand this customer profile more holistically? Then you start getting to the question of where do I find that information? Do I search on Google? Probably not. Then you start, needing a crypto search engine that can really help you with that exercise. So this is where probably, some of the corporates can be just having that in mind in terms of one day once you need that, you probably need a more specialized tool. And in terms of some of the sentiment analysis that we have, it's a lot of that actually lives on, social platforms such as Twitter, Discord, all of this kind of stuff, and is very difficult to access through. It's impossible to access through Google. So today you can very easily come on to Kaito and then start searching for, hey, what are some of the sentiment signals that we have? We pull out all the data, quantifying the sentiment analysis over time in terms of each specific topic that you have in mind.
I think, what was appealing for us, right, was, as you had mentioned before, we use the product for DD, for being able to quickly access what communities think. But as he said, right, like if I want to see, which of these particular NFT holders had been marketed to, then I can use that product and use Kaito in a different manner. We talked about technologies like AI, and as an investor, you hear that word a lot. It is very exciting. Everyone kind of got used to it given the ChatGPT things that we're seeing. But with respect to Kaito in particular, I think that there are two things that sort of stood out for me how they use the AI. First of all is just to augment the product. So you can easily ask the question and it makes it easier for the user to use the product. It augments everything. It's going to touch pretty much most tools and enhance most tools that people use, right? And then the second thing, being able to cut away all the noise, being able to say, okay, what's a primary source, and then distill that from, let's say, Twitter, they distill it from Discord, from certain forums, and then give it back to you and return back to you. That requires some level of AI as well. So I think those are the ways that we saw and we like seeing Kaito use that in their product.
That's really incredible. I think one of the big unlocks is when you think about a traditional financial analyst at Citadel or at Citigroup eventually using this tool for all types of data and just curing it in natural language. That's amazing. I do want to double click there and just ask, is there plans to sort of expand Kaito beyond simply crypto and the crypto digital asset markets right now? Is there ways that enterprises who are dealing with traditional financial assets can use the tool?
It's a very good question. It's something that we've been thinking about a lot as well. I think so far we see a great potential and great opportunity just right in the crypto realm. And the specific question that is the pain point for everyone is simply that, blockchain space is a different infrastructure versus the open web, right? So there's a very clear proposition in terms of, hey, how do we index that information? Because Google cannot. And then into the future, there are, adjacencies and areas that we're looking into as well. So potentially US stock market, a lot of the information also lives on various different forums. Obviously, the official information is more regulated and coming through like filings and stuff. But a lot of unofficial information, sentiment, and all this kind of stuff live on, thousands of different platforms.
Yeah, I can imagine just scraping entirety of Seeking Alpha, all these different platforms where these conversations are happening, structuring it, and then letting, the big funds go after it and use that alpha. That's incredible. I think just to transition slowly into the broader intersections of crypto and AI, they're obviously very different technologies, but we're already starting to see some cool overlaps. And I just want to ask you both broadly, and feel free to take it as broad or deep as you prefer. What are the intersections between crypto and AI that excite you the most? And Jacob, maybe we could start with yourself.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I think I've already mentioned one, right, which Kaito do really well, which is just augmenting your current products and services. I'll give you another example of that. So there is an investment that we made into a low code or no code platform. And sometimes it's hard to know where to start with what smart contracts to use. So you can use a query model to ask, give me a basic smart contract for a swap or for minting an NFT. And then that helps you on your journey already. There's nothing necessarily groundbreaking about that, but it does lead to productivity and efficiency gains in the same way that someone might ask ChatGPT to write me an email requesting for me to go on leave, right? So I think that one is the most sort of common sort of way in which AI can intersect with Web3 development tools, for example. Then there's a few other things that are kind of interesting out there in the market. If you think about Web3 crypto blockchains, you have to think about what are the features and qualities of them that are useful. Firstly, I think it's the fact that they are good as coordination tools, because you have tokens as a mechanism. You have these architectures like proof of work or proof of POS, or proof of stake, to be able to then affect or incentivize people to act in a certain way. And one of the things we're seeing is that the resources needed to do AI calculations, to run models are scarce, right? They run on GPUs. GPUs are a scarce resource. How do you then match GPUs and where people might have spare processing capacity with people who have machine learning workloads and want to run those things? And so we've seen a couple of startups actually emerge on that basis. We personally haven't invested, but we've been watching that. It's been fascinating to see how this strength of blockchain, which is incentivizing behavior, has been able to at least start the seeds of people working in that direction. The second thing I would say is that, blockchains can be controlled or they can be decentralized. And if we believe that access to AI models should be universal for everyone, then blockchain architecture also helps to help that. So for example, everyone gets access to a token, then they can use that to ensure that they get access to the using AI models out there. I don't think many people have built that yet. People are thinking about how to architect that, but those are two additional ways in which AI and crypto have sort of coalesced, but it's still very early.
Yeah, and you drew an interesting comparison there. A topic that has been of interest to a lot of Web3 venture funds is the concept of decentralized physical infrastructure, also known as DePIN. And so we can use the incentive models that are basically built in to have individuals run anything from storage to AI in terms of like having them train large language models, to server capacity, to really get them into this ecosystem and have them help train these models that are still in their infancy. So I guess, like, as you start to think about that, the question that I have always been asking is, are tokens necessarily, required in these models? Does AI do anything to change that? Obviously, like we have these ideas around how AI will intersect with all these different industries that are out there. But when we start thinking about more traditional industries, are there any other incentive mechanisms that we can start to play around with as it pertains to the intersection here? Maybe
That's a
we'll
good.
hand that one off to, whoever
Yeah,
wants
no,
to.
please, no, please go ahead.
I mean, the way I think about it, I mean, obviously OpenAI does it in a way that they hire like 1,000 engineers and do all the air chat, right? And Alex Wang the other day came out and said that, so Alex Wang is the CEO of Scale AI, and he was saying that, hey, in the future, all these, companies that train fundamental foundation models or large language models can be using a very different infrastructure. I think token can come in very, very naturally there, right? And the actual usage of the product, people can actually get reward, and it's not going to be as as rigid as
The word you're thinking of is square peg in the round hole, right? Because a lot of models we see like tokens being integrated, and they're not necessarily required or don't really benefit at all. But in this situation, like you could use credits, right? If we want to just kind of take away this idea of tokens, we could have credits being used to use a certain platform, and then incentivize those who are helping to train this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once you have credits, then one side is, hey, I can use this credit against the actual usage of the product that can give us better experience. But then when it comes that people want to actually monetize on those credits, maybe token is the way. Then is kind of the intersection there. But that's
Totally. I just wanted to say it's super interesting concept because you're seeing in a lot of funding rounds, like Microsoft and OpenAI, credits are being used as basically cash because they're worth something. And so in this in the parallel to DeepIn, you always have to ask, why is the token worth something? Well, in this case, tokens as GPU credits is definitely worth something, and there's a market value there for it. Super exciting.
Yeah, and I guess like talking about funding rounds, a couple of years ago, it felt like crypto was at its peak hype cycle, and now it feels like AI is at peak hype cycle. I mean, putting aside the venture funding and news cycles, where do we actually stand in terms of the maturity and adoption timeline of these technologies? I mean, AI had its chat GPT moment where folks were starting to realize, okay, this is a technology that my parents could use. But we haven't really had that in the digital asset space, as far as I'm concerned. And so companies like OpenAI are peaking at around 100 million users. And it's led people to say that AI has a much more clear use case. And they'll still argue that blockchain and crypto doesn't. What do you, I guess, both say to these folks? We can start with Jacob here.
Yeah, I think, the starting point would be this. AI has been around for quite a while. It's probably, many decades of research underpinning where we got to today. Blockchain, I would say, has really been around for 1 decade, let's call it, right? Maybe slightly more than that. And so we're really early when it comes to blockchain still. I know that that's a common refrain across the industry, but we really are. I think AI is having its moment right now because of the way that we've been conditioned to search for information and get answers. It's all started out with, Yahoo and then Google, and basically we're all used to just Googling things. It's become, its own word now. And the large language model implementation of AI basically made it easy for us to do that. And it worked. It's magic. I have to expend very little effort. It's super easy to use, and the results are like magic. Crypto hasn't got there yet. Blockchain, Web3 hasn't got there yet. There are a lot of sort of I guess, friction points, like having to own a wallet, having to manage your own keys. And if you lose your key, you lose your wallet, you lose all your assets, right? It's not easy to develop apps. You have to know how to call blockchains, you have to know how to index, you have to know how to work with a whole set of different backends, right? So I think that many solutions are being invested into right now to help solve those problems, to make it easier for people to use, right? To make it easier for people to just access the blockchain via mobile apps, to abstract away all that difficulty. So if you're a developer, you can just basically do several clicks and you can get along the way and start building out what you want. And so I think we haven't quite necessarily hit that inflection point yet for something like Web3. There have been signs though, right, of really solid use cases that have emerged. And I always tie it back to what are the properties of blockchains that enable all of this, because that will give you a sense of where the use cases could come. And so I mentioned ownership right earlier on, but ownership, provenance is something that blockchains really bring across, because theoretically, blockchains are immutable. So as soon as you've made a transaction, you know who owns what, and you have a record of that. And so when you think about that, those ownership rights and the ownership properties are very helpful for things like your ID, like having a decentralized ID, for owning digital assets, and then for also maybe owning real world assets, because now we've started seeing people tokenize treasury bills, tokenize bonds. We've even seen people tokenize investment properties, but I think, those ones are a little further up the risk curve, because there's a lot of problems with matching a token with the reality of what's happening to the property in real life. But anything to do with ownership, the use cases are starting to blossom. It will take time. The second one is also that blockchains typically enable fast payment settlement rails, right? You can easily send money. It gets settled within seconds to minutes, depending on the blockchain that you use. And a real use case that emerged out of that was stablecoins, because nobody wanted to swap to send money in fluctuating currencies. There's always that horror story or beautiful story, whichever way you want to think about it, of someone sending Bitcoin to pizza, and now that money would have been worth hundreds and thousands of dollars or millions, right? So that's where stablecoin development came out, and we are really starting to see real use cases for that, especially in emerging countries where they, let's say the US dollar is a little bit more stable than their government currencies. And then the last one is just the fact that blockchains are great for coordinating people with incentives, and we touched on that with AI and DePIN as well. So it's coming. Yeah.
I think those are just really good points, Jacob. I think from our perspective, or from a personal perspective, obviously I echo what Jacob said. Like AI has 70 years of development, and crypto has probably 10. And I remember the days when Deep Blue first came out. That was 25 years ago, and AlphaGo by DeepMind, that was almost 10 years ago. Back in the day when AlphaGo first came out, nobody really knew in their real life what's going to happen. Right? There's no real world implication in terms of what's happening to people's real life. It's up until ChatGPT that people see that, hey, I can actually do this, and that's a massively retail-oriented product. But actually, I think in the past 20 years, AI has already been part of our life on a daily basis, but mostly coming from a corporate perspective. So some of the products that we use at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, these are heavily AI integrated. So my perspective is, in terms of the adoption for crypto, if we look at the journey of AI, maybe initially we're going to have a lot of killer cases coming from corporates, it's B2B use cases. Not necessarily all the time, but feel it right away in terms of, let's say, for example, if I transact with Western Union or Wise or whatever, I don't know what underlying infrastructure they're using, but maybe they're using USDT. As a customer, I don't have to worry about my wallet. I don't have to worry about other stuff, but it's the same use case. It's the same user experience, but the underlying technology could be massively different today versus maybe in the past, or in the future versus today. So I think that could be one journey in terms of how we get to some of the use cases. And then the other thing I want to point out is, before ChatGPT, nobody knew that, hey, search and just querying information and knowledge graph could be massively different. So, we never know with blockchain is obviously a very different infrastructure versus what we had before. So we shouldn't limit our imagination in terms of what could come next, right? So let's let's be optimistic in terms of what's going to come next, and it will be at one day that we see something like NFT. Before NFT came out, nobody knew that, hey, that could be so interesting. So let's give the developers and the community some time, and let's work something out.
I think there's two things that you both sort of said that are super interesting. The first was that, AI has actually been around for a while. It just hasn't been this hype generative AI that we talk about today that, the average consumer is familiar with, but there's been machine learning and advancements in this theory forever. And the second, and you mentioned this, and Jacob, you really touched upon an example, is stable coins as sort of a killer use case that, kind of gets underappreciated in the sense that before crypto, sending $1 to my grandma in India, literally not possible. It's going to cost more in fees to get that dollar to her than the actual dollar itself. But because blockchain rails now enables that, like, that's possible. And that in itself is extremely cool when you think about the future of micro tipping and payments and streaming. Very cool. The one thing I do want to add to the mix, and Max and I talk about this a lot, is crypto by its nature is sort of a backend technology where AI was always meant to be the end user, like higher up the stack, used by the actual person. Like even in sci-fi, you see people talking with AI, but crypto by its nature is a database. It's decentralized and it's programmable, but the whole point is that data is spread and trustless and immutable and self-executing. So maybe we don't have a ChatGPT moment, but doesn't mean crypto isn't going to be massively influential. And like you mentioned, tons of corporate use cases. Just wanted to throw that, but amazing.
And then another point you brought up, both of you, was around like actually obfuscating away the technologies from the user interface. So, when I open up Gmail, I'm not necessarily worrying about SMTP or IMAP protocols. And I think, we're moving towards this area, and a lot of it is being driven by institutional adoption. Obviously, the news of this week was PayPal and integrating a stable coin into their settlement solution. So, when you can go and you can buy something from a merchant and then instantaneously transact in these stable coins or fiat currency that's backed by these stable coins, that's when we realize that the power of this technology is actually transforming people's day-to-day lives without them realizing it. And I think that's ultimately what we at Plug and Play are looking to invest in the future of this Web3 industry, and as it starts to touch institutional adoption.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you think about sort of interfaces as we've gone on, right? You start out with command line interface, then we had, Windows 3.1, Windows 95, then somewhere along the line came iOS and the mobile phone. So every sort of generation, it takes several years, maybe a decade to improve upon. Then, when we got to the iPhone, broadband had to improve, like broadband infrastructure across the world. And then once that happened, we started having apps, right? I think with respect to things like Web3, we're still very much, back in the maybe just past the dial-up stage, and a lot of the UI problems haven't been solved yet. It's not smooth. It can be quite difficult, and people don't want to deal with the hassle. But once you get to that stage, right, where maybe, as you said, Kavi, the back end is powered by blockchain, so like what you own and all the transactions are happening on the back end. There's a record of all of these transactions, but the front end maybe it's just something that's a lot more user friendly. Maybe it's powered by AI. Maybe you just say, hey, I want to buy 1,000 USD worth of Ethereum, and it just gets executed for you in the background. Maybe when we get to that stage, that's the next kind of vision for where this can go. Alternatively, it could be very simple, right? It could be a corporate saying, I want to know who are the buyers of my loyalty program, right? So maybe who owns an NFT of this particular drop, and I would like to access them. So help me solve that. Right. And as long as you don't have to be the one dealing with all the blockchain complexity at the background, the fact is that you have an immutable record of who those people are and how to target them. So this is where we look to get to in the future eventually.
One of the funny memes that's going around the venture and the crypto world right now is that all the Web3 VCs now switching to AI, and you saw Paradigm sort of caught the slack because they removed some wording and changed some wording on their webpage. I guess this is more so a question for Jacob, but how do you at Superscrypt as a Web3 fund approach AI? Do you have a separate thesis for it directly? Are you allocating funds? What's the take?
I think one of the things that really became clear on this call is that AI has been around for a while, right? And it takes a long time to hit an inflection point. So what we do is we look into a lot of these enabling technologies and augmenting technologies like AI and zero knowledge proofs. And then we think, okay, like how far out are they really from hitting that inflection point, having users use them, and then having companies really be generating sustainable revenues that we can then invest in. And I think the answer here is that we keep an eye on it, we do deep research on it, we study it, but it's also very important not to just jump in and just start investing. So for example, Kaito, we were even talking before ChatGPT really hit because they were a solution to solving some of the information and searching problems that are out there. But then we started opening up and learning more about AI along the way, having spoken to them, and then we can assess other opportunities. I think ultimately it can take a long time before these things hit that inflection point. So as an investor, you research, you study about it, and then if you are going to invest and deploy capital, you then have to start thinking about the particular team, right? Are they going to be able to tide it over for several years? Because it might take longer for the inflection point to hit. And then that becomes a question of their burn, of their ability to raise capital in future, of their ability to really manage things well.
And one of the things that I always think about is how we can gain understanding or lessons in terms of emerging technologies and then apply them to the crypto and digital asset space. And this one, I actually, this question's for you, which is, how was your time working in, I guess, TradFin, as I like to call it, TradFi? How did that influence your development of the product you're building, and what were kind of some of the learnings that you came across to then hopefully utilize when you were building Kaito?
That's a good question, actually. I think the benefit of working at TradFi for almost 10 years is financial industry is the industry that has been that's been there for a long period of time, right? And a lot of the development tool sets or things that I've been using exists for a long time and very, very mature. So the likes of Bloomberg, FactSet, Toinson, Reuters, AlphaSense, all these kind of very, very good data set of financial institutions have been there. I've been using them day in, day out. So those are some of the, blueprints in terms of, hey, where, the standard of the product of how in a market, how things are working. That gives me perspective. But obviously, I need to apply everything that I learned in traditional finance to crypto, which is extremely different. I can give you many examples in terms of, hey, in traditional finance, obviously, all the companies, you only need to watch for the official filings. They file with the SEC. But obviously in crypto, nothing happens like that. People just tweet out something on their platform. It could be the company tweet, Twitter. It could be, some person working in that. All of the protocols are kind of decentralized in nature. So a lot of the discussions centralized. So a lot of the learning has to be on the job as well. But also I had the benefit of kind of being in the crypto world since 2017 and very much deep in the kind of the community and as well. I've been kind of doing crypto research along the way. So I had the benefit from the both worlds and ultimately building a product that the community in this segment would want.
As you were sort of giving the background of TradFi, I actually thought of one question, and this could go to, I guess, both yourself and Jacob, which is, what do you think the roles of incumbents, traditional finance incumbents, will be in the space you're operating. So Bloomberg is set to release an AI-based product, and maybe Coinbase as well is going to release something in this space. But how will these TradFi incumbents either complement you, compete with you? What are you seeing, and what do both of you think?
You want to go first on the AI side? I can talk more on the Web3 side after.
Yeah, so the AI incumbents, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer these days that there's obviously different layers of AI, technology and infrastructure, but ultimately data is the ultimate I would say differentiator or maybe the kind of barriers to entry, right? So each of the verticals, you really have to drill down to, do you have unique set of data? Do you have the unique understanding, or it requires a unique set of skills to understand the data? And that is where Kaito comes in. A lot of the data that we have are private in nature, or not, semi-public or not public at all. So, user data is obviously a big part of that. But outside of that, even much of the information that exists on, Twitter, Discord, a lot of the governance forums, these are extremely scattered and not sort of searchable on Google. And then when it comes to sort of the blockchain space, all the information is public, but how do you understand those information? And it actually requires a very, very deep, unique set of skill sets. And that is where Kaito comes in. Put everything together, combine all the signals from on-chain and off-chain as well, and combined with user data, and that becomes sort of a barrier to entry. And then in terms of working with traditional finance or AI technologies that exist in the space, is really to just learn from the everything that we have, and also train some of the models that that we look to kind of iterate as well and leverage all the latest technologies.
From a Web3 side, we look at some of the more traditional companies like fintechs or TradFi, and even some of the larger crypto companies who've been around like Coinbase. We look at them as potential partners, right? They could be using some of our portfolio companies' products and solutions. For example, if they wanted to very pointed high signal search, maybe we connect them with Kaito, see if there's anything that makes sense there. If they want to reach certain communities or provide tools for their team to develop, then there are other portfolio companies that we have that we'll try and connect them. Ultimately, for us, given the background that we have coming from TradFi and traditional investing, we try to be a very trusted avenue for us to connect teams that we've done deep DD in to the right partners. And the reason why I say this is because, again, if we are going to see the promise of blockchain really blossom, we will need everyone in the world using the technology. They don't need to know that they're using that technology, but a large of the backend has got to be powered by that. And to a comment that you made earlier today, is that a lot of this will be B2B to begin with, right? Providing you the right blockchain to run your transactions, providing you the right NFT contracts, etc., to have an ownership over certain loyalty programs or things that you want to get out there, or even providing dev tools and search tools. So this is how we see it. They're a critical part of what blockchain could be. I think there are very many benefits that blockchain could bring to these businesses, like faster settlement rails and ownership, composability, and the ability for them to transact globally. So ultimately, I think our job is that glue in the middle to try and educate both sides, and hopefully do well for our investments too.
That feels like a really amazing place to stop, given the nod to enterprise, nod to B2B, excuse me. We're going to make sure to put a poll up for the folks in the audience to connect with you afterwards. But I just want to say first, of course, thank you so much, Jacob and you, for the time. Please let us know where the audience can find you publicly. Feel free to take it first, Jacob.
Oh, okay, right. You can find me on Twitter at JacobKXYZ. Otherwise, our website is superscrypt.xyz, and that's with a Y over there.
Amazing.
And our website is www.kaito.ai. And you can also find me on Twitter as well. It's punk PUNK9277.
Thank you so much, folks. This was an amazing conversation.
That's
Yeah.
how you know he's plugged into crypto, because he's got a digital image as his persona. So that's why we invested in him.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very on brand. But thank you both for taking the time today. We'll be sure to follow up with any audience questions, and the audience feel free to reach out to both Jacob and you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this episode of our Crypto Talk series. You and Jacob are, some of the most knowledgeable and high-profile guests we've had on. So it was an honor to host them and to have you all with us. In case you folks are interested in connecting with them, you from the AI and entrepreneurship perspective, Jacob from the investing landscape, we launched a poll, and we're happy to facilitate warm intros after the event. Other than that, folks, thank you so much, and have a great day.